Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Listen Up Pro podcast, your go-to source for LGBTQ plus news, culture, and stories that actually matter. I am your host, Zach Randles-Friedman, and today's episode is a little different because we're not just talking about headlines you've already seen or are all over your feed. We're talking about what's happening underneath them. Because right now, there's a shift happening in the LGBTQ plus community, not just politically, but culturally, economically, and even personally. And some of these changes, they're subtle, some are complicated, and honestly, they're a little uncomfortable. So today we're getting into 5 stories that you probably haven't heard yet, but absolutely should be paying attention to. First, Hollywood quietly pulling back on LGBTQ representation. So let's start in Hollywood because while it may feel like LGBTQ representation has exploded over the last few years, behind the scenes, something very different is happening. Studios are reportedly scaling back queer storylines, not publicly, but not with announcements, but quietly. Scenes are being edited out, characters are being rewritten, and in some cases, entire story arcs are being removed before filming even begins. Why? Global markets. Because when studios are trying to set films and sell them internationally, especially where LGBTQ plus content is restricted or banned, queer representation becomes negotiable. And here's the part that's really important. This isn't about being framed as discrimination, it's about being framed as business, which raises a bigger question. If representation only exists when it's profitable, how real is it to begin with? Next, the LGBTQ medical refugees are relocating across the US. So let's shift into something happening much closer to home. Across the United States, there's a growing number of LGBTQ plus individuals, especially trans people and their families, who are literally moving states to access health care. So let that sink in. Families are selling their homes, leaving their jobs, pulling kids out of school just to make sure they can receive medically necessary care. And states like California, Minnesota, and Massachusetts are seeing major increase in out-of-state patients. This is being called a rise in medical refugees. And it's not just emotional, it's economic. Because when people move, they bring housing demand, job shifts, healthcare strain. So this isn't just a rights issue anymore, it's a migration story. Plus, think about the 1,700 plus people that live in Kansas who lost their driver's license in a day. All of a sudden, one day, they don't have a driver's license because of the sex marker they have on their ID did not match what's on their birth certificate. So their ID or their driver's license were made invalid. Next, we have the rise of closeted influencers. So let's talk about social media because this is a wild one. There's a growing trend of influencers who are creating content for LGBTQ audiences without actually coming out themselves. We're talking fashion creators, lifestyle influencers, dating advice accounts, all clearly speaking to queer audiences, but never explicitly identifying as LGBTQ+. Why? Because staying ambiguous always allows them to keep brand deals in conservative markets, avoid backlash, maximize reach across multiple audiences, and listen, for some people, that's about safety. For others, it's about strategy, and it's raising a real conversation. Is this smart business? Or is it profiting off a community without actually standing it? Before I continue with the news, I wanted to tell you about I like keeping my money where I can actually see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers seem to be keeping my money too. For years, I was overpaying for my phone bill, crazy high monthly charges, random fees, and those so-called free perks that somehow made everything more expensive. It just didn't make sense anymore. So I finally switched to Mint Mobile. And honestly, I wish I had done this sooner. You should check out Mint Mobile. Make the switch at mintmobile.com/listenup. Mint Mobile exists to fix everything that's broken with wireless. You don't have to overpay just because that's how it's always been. Their plans start at just $15 a month, and you still get premium wireless, high-speed data, unlimited talks and texts, and all the nation's largest 5G network. And the best part, you can bring your own phone and phone number, set it up with an eSIM in just a few minutes, and start saving right away. No contracts, no nonsense. I use Mint Mobile and you should too. The service has honestly been just as good, if not better, than my old provider. And I'm saving a ton of money every single month. It feels good knowing I'm not throwing away money anymore. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/listenup. That's mintmobile.com/listenup. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months. 5 GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for the first 3 months only, then full price options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. And back to the news, where our next story is Pride is changing and not everyone agrees. So let's talk about Pride, because after years of massive corporate sponsorships, rainbow branding, and big budget floats, some cities are starting to push back. We are seeing a shift forward. Less corporate presence, more local LGBTQ plus organizations, smaller community-driven events, and in some cases, entire celebrations are being restructured to remove or limit corporate influence. Why? Because a lot of people feel like Pride became too commercialized, especially when companies show up in June and disappear for the rest of the year. But here's the tension. Corporate money funds prides. So if you remove it, what happens to the scale of these events? This is the start of what I think is a new era of Pride, and we're watching it happen all in real time. And next, let's talk about same-sex divorce, how it's reshaping the legal system. So finally, there's something that we don't hear about enough. What happens after equality? Because now that same-sex marriage has been legal for years, courts are seeing a rise in same-sex divorce cases. They're complicated, and we're talking about legal systems trying to navigate. Surrogacy and parental rights, custody battles without clear precedents, asset division and relationships that weren't always legally recognized. In many cases, the law is catching up, and lawyers are saying this is forcing courts to rewrite how family law works in real time. This is what progress looks like after the celebration. Messy, complex, and still evolving. So here's the thing. Not every LGBTQ story is going to be loud. Not every story is going to trend. And not every shift is going to come with a headline. But that doesn't mean they're not shaping our lives in every real way. From Hollywood to healthcare, from social media to pride, to the legal system itself. This conversation is changing. And the question is, are we paying attention? If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the Listen Up Girl podcast wherever you get your podcast. Share it with a friend and keep the conversation going, because these stories deserve to be heard. I'll see you tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news. Thanks for listening.